From the Oklahoma newsroom, it's time for the Red Zone, the Hoops edition, the extended look at Oklahoma basketball here from the Oklahoma studios. I'm Jenny Carlson with fellow columnist Barry Trammell and OU beat writer Joe Masato. Guys, we're deep in the heart of Big 12 play. Joe, you had a chance to head out to Lubbock earlier this week to see that matchup. Two really good teams, in Big 12 play. OU loses, but again, hangs pretty tight. And after the game, Chris Beard, the Texas Tech coach, said, I think these guys can contend. How realistic in your mind is that Oklahoma is one of those teams at the top of the conference?
I don't think it's realistic necessarily that they can contend for the Big 12 crown, but I do think it's realistic that they're right in that top four mix, along with Texas Tech, Kansas, and Iowa State. You saw what they did at Kansas with the close loss. You see what they did at Texas Tech. They were up at halftime, let the lead slip. Texas Tech might be the most talented team in the conference. So to go on the road and do that against Texas Tech was really impressive. And I think Chris Beard is impressed with Oklahoma because they play a lot like his Texas Tech team does as far as being really tough defensively. Kind of one star player, Jarrett Culver and Christian James. There's a lot of similarities between those two teams.
Barry, I know Oklahoma right now sits 1-2 in the league, but I mean, it's the most hopeful 1-2 record I remember in a while. I mean, this is a team that I think once the schedule sort of turns away from the top two teams in the league in Tech and Kansas, you're going to see the Sooners win some ball games.
Yeah, I mean, they've played theoretically the two toughest games on their schedule in the conference, at Lubbock, at Lawrence. And, they acquitted themselves well. Came back against KU, made it a good game at the end. We're tied at Lubbock with 4 minutes to go. So I like this OU team. They're playing well. I think they're the third best team, maybe fourth best. Iowa State's up there too. And if you're in the top 5 of the Big 12, you're in great shape for the NCAA tournament, not just to make it, but to have a good seed. So I like a lot of these, what I'm seeing out of the Sooners, and they're doing it largely without Jamoni McNeese, their best inside presence. He's fighting the sprained ankle for a month. If he gets healthy, they get even better.
Joe, the if on that, on Jamoni McNeese and that ankle, it always seems like, I mean, we saw obviously in the Bedlam game, he's playing, everything's fine, and then all of a sudden he's, sitting down courtside, grabbing at the ankle. Is this just going to be a theme with him throughout this year that he's going to have to battle through this?
I guess so. I mean, I thought initially sprained ankle, maybe he sits for a couple games and then he's back. Hasn't been like that at all. We'll actually be out at practice later today for the latest update on Jamoni McNeese, but it's almost the same update every time. He said he feels good in practice, that he's been a full participant. Then when it comes to game time, he has hinted that it's sort of a confidence thing. He doesn't feel totally sure that he can land. The biggest thing is landing on that right ankle when he goes up for a block or goes up for a dunk. And with his game, he plays above the rim quite a bit, so that's a key thing. But in Lubbock, he would play for brief stretches, then he would come back, sit on the stationary bike, not always riding it, but just having his right leg kind of propped up on the handlebars. He just didn't look right, played 8 minutes, but we'll see what he does on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem like it's just one of those things that he can play through at some points, Barry, and then not at others. And there's not really a chance to rest. I mean, every team's got a little bit of they'll have a break where they maybe only play one game a week, but he's not going to have big extended stretches to rest that thing, it doesn't look like.
No, and, this is where the medical staff's going to have to get together. I don't know if extended rest is what he needs. They just go away for 2 or 3 weeks, Jamoni, and try to come back, or if he is gradually getting better. Tech is the kind of game where they could have used him. He was fairly effective. I mean, he had a nice block, and he made his only shot the other night in Lubbock. So. And early in the year, he was so good. He was really, he'd become a much better offensive player, always been a good rim protector, very active, very energetic. So if they can get him back healthy, he's a difference maker in terms of the ceiling for this Oklahoma basketball team.
Joe, 3 games into Big 12 play, you mentioned the fact that Chris Beard really likes his team probably because they're winning without sort of that star power, without obvious offensive prowess necessarily. But I'm curious, 3 games in, who do you feel like might take some additional steps here in the next few weeks to really help the Sooners, as they really try to solidify themselves in that top 3, 4, 5 teams of the Big 12?
I think Brady Manick's probably the X factor at this point and the guy that they've got to get going more from 3. He shot the ball really well at times last year. This year he's been largely inconsistent from deep. He didn't shoot the ball well at Texas Tech, but he made a huge shot with about 4.5 minutes left to tie the game at 51. So maybe that helps his confidence. He's been much better. He's just a sophomore, but in his OU career, he's been much better at home than he has been on the road. So Saturday could be a big game for him. But if Brady Manick shoots the ball well, it just takes so much pressure off of Christian James because those two guys are the two guys that can really score it for the Sooners.
Barry, who would you like to see more out of as the Sooners move forward in Big 12 play?
You know, it strikes me that Miles Reynolds is not playing as well here since conference play started as he did there, in the month of December, basically. I didn't think he got off to a great start transferring from Pacific, but he really came on and was a key to that Sooner surge in December. So they need more out of him. James clearly is not – he's clearly their best player, the best scorer, a really good player, but he can't carry the offensive load. Somebody's got to help him. Calixte's made some shots. Manick's another, good example of that. But Christian Doolittle, I think, has been very solid. Needs to be more assertive, I would say. But Miles Reynolds just strikes me as the guy that can score. He just needs to.
Joe, you mentioned Saturday being a big game for Brady Manick. That Saturday is against TCU at home. Then the Sooners get another home game next week on Wednesday against Kansas State. A couple games that you would expect Oklahoma to be favored in, to be the better team before they go to Texas next Saturday. A couple home games. I mean, I don't know, we talked about the Bedlam game last week. Not necessarily you don't want to term it must win, but boy, you feel like you got to win. These are the type of home games against teams that you look to be better than. Sooners need to come out on the winning side of these, I would think.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you look at those top 4 teams in the Big 12 that we talked about, I think you expect all 4 of those teams. I know they're not going to win all their home games, but that's got to be the expectation at this point, especially when you're going on the road at Kansas, at Texas Tech. You're not supposed to win those games. Oh, you didn't win those games, but that means you've got to beat teams like TCU on Saturday and then Kansas State next week, because you are going to get some teams on the road, but you've really got to hold serve at home. And when OU went to Kansas last week, Bill Self talked about that quite a bit. Like, you just have to win your home games in this conference.
I know we're only 3 games into conference play, Barry, but when you look at TCU, Kansas State, and Texas, 3 teams that are. I'm not really sure how to peg any of them just yet. TCU goes to Kansas the other night, pushes back, kind of gets Kansas in a closer than expected fit there. K-State down big to West Virginia, come back. Texas loses at Oklahoma State. How do you sort of peg these next 3 for the Sooners?
Well, I think TCU's the solid one out of those trio. Texas is up and down. Texas can't shoot. Kansas State is missing Dean Wade. Much more than we thought. I mean, this is a team that made the Elite 8 last year, picked 2nd in the conference, and they've not been very good at all. Lost at home to Texas, should have lost at home to West Virginia. So I think Kansas State's headed for a pretty good fall. But TCU under Jamie Dixon's really solid. I like them. I'd pick TCU as the number 5 team in the league right now, behind OU, Iowa State, Tech, and Kansas.
Is K-State, is their situation the biggest surprise to you guys in the league? I mean, OU may be the biggest surprise in the league, but is K-State and where they are at this point biggest surprise, Joe? I
think given their expectations, K-State's probably the biggest disappointment. West Virginia obviously lost Javon Carter and some other players, but they've started out 0-3 in Big 12 play. But Kansas State was a team that, like Barry said, coming off that NCAA tournament run last year, they're on the bubble right now, and right now looking outside looking in at the NCAA tournament.
I know this is all about the Sooners, but as we talk about what they could potentially do in the league, it behooves us to talk a bit about Kansas, because I don't know if we've talked since we found out that Kansas big man out for the year. Lots of transition going on with the Jayhawks. Are we still picking Kansas to win the league? Anybody want to?
I'm picking Kansas. Is somebody not? Is somebody not picking Kansas?
I don't know. Is there any reason?
Tech will win the Big 12, and the Democrats will take control of the Oklahoma House. And free money will fall from the sky. Those are my predictions.
All right, Joe, are you that certain?
I'm not quite that certain. I will pick Kansas just because I feel like I have to pick Kansas. But I was really impressed seeing Texas Tech play. I mean, I thought OU played a good game. I think Jarrett Culver might be the best player in the Big 12, and that Tech defense is the best defense in the country. So when you combine those two things, I think they're going to be really tough to beat.
It's interesting because, you know, obviously Kansas has had, I mean, just last year had some question marks, and yet they still found a way to win the league going away. I mean, can we put into context how good a job Bill Self has done up there, Barry, over the years?
Well, he's done a fantastic job, and he's done it with teams that he's won the league in years when he just totally remade the rosters, similar to this year.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's not like they're playing against a bunch of teams that can't play. I mean, OU had a Final Four team and didn't make it. The Iowa State's had excellent teams. Texas had some great teams. Just all over, you've seen really good teams just fail to challenge the Jayhawks. 2004, the Tony Allen Cowboys. Last team to win the Big 12.
Wow.
That was not Kansas. That was 15 years ago. I mean, think about that.
Yeah.
So it's a remarkable run.
All right, well, Joe, you saw Texas Tech. We'll see if you like in the Red Raiders, if that ultimately unseats the Jayhawks. Lots of Big 12 play left. Again, Sooners at home on Saturday against TCU. That's a 1 o'clock tip down at the Lloyd Noble Center. Be sure to stay with the best coverage team anywhere at newsok.com and every day in the Oklahoman.